Now, activists in the U.S. have started a 7-day march to denounce a grand jury decision not to indict the white officer who shot dead a black teenager back in August. The 190-kilometer rally has been organized by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Dubbed as Journey for Justice, it's being staged from the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson to the capital city of Missouri State. The marchers want the chief of Ferguson police removed. They also urged the government to end racial profiling in the United States. Earlier, protesters in several cities disrupted one of the busiest shopping days of the year, called Black Friday. To discuss the situation further, let's go to St. Louis and talk to Omali Yeshitela, chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. Welcome to the program, sir. Mr. Yeshitela, with weeks of protests and demonstrations across the United States, is the United States on the verge of a black uprising?
I think that is one of the fears that the leadership of this government is concerned with, that what is happening coming out of Ferguson. Ferguson is functioning as a kind of incubator for resistance, black resistance in this country, and the fear of a genuine generalized insurgency is something that I think concerns the government. So there's a great possibility that that will occur. Some people anticipate that occurring. I think the United States government anticipates what is developed in Ferguson to resulting in a general insurgency by the black population or the African population in this country.
And what would the consequences of that be?
Well, I think that increasingly what we find is that more and more people defining the relationship that the African population in this country have with the United States government as a colonialism, a kind of domestic colonialism, that the police in this country function as an occupying force, no different from how the U.S. occupies Iraq or how Israel occupies Palestine, for example. It's a colonial force, and I think that what it will look like, increasingly people are determined to be free and legitimately free. Even as you mentioned earlier on, the march that's going to the Capitol, while there's some discussion by people of training the police to function differently, the basic concern that's coming from many of us is black community control of the police department, that we have to have control of the forces in our communities that are carrying guns, that are sanctioned by law to carry guns, should be controlled by the people in our communities. I think an insurgency, we have seen evidence of insurgency in this country in the 1960s. It was brutally crushed. There were assassinations of leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, members of the Black Panther Party, organizations crushed. That has happened, and I do think a resurgence is occurring in this country, and this time it has more of a, it seems to be developing more of an international flavor, thanks in no little part to the fact that people around the world are sending statements of solidarity with the struggle of African people in this country, stemming from the situation in Ferguson.
And of course, as the protests and demonstrations gain momentum, how violent is the police and security forces getting, and the National Guard for that matter?
Well, it is really interesting because what Ferguson has done, the sustained nature of the resistance in Ferguson has pushed to the surface the violence that African people in this country are confronted with every day by the police. So while there may appear to be an intensification of that violence, it's primarily because of what is happening in Ferguson. The sustained level of resistance has forced the government to reveal itself to public view to people all around the world, with the military forces, the tanks and other equipment that's used by the United States government to fight counterinsurgency wars around the world, that publicly are being displayed in the United States. And for many people, that is something that is unusual. But for most of us in the African community throughout this country, we've been seeing this over and over and over again. So there is this discussion, for example, in this country about what they call the militarization of the police department. What they have finally disclosed is that a part of the Pentagon budget includes resources that go to supplying police departments throughout this country with military weaponry to be able to contain the African and other communities in this country, especially Mexican, Latino, etc. So I don't know if there's an intensification. I do know that much of the world is now being able to see what we experience on a daily basis in this country.
Indeed. And finally, recently we had this report that Darren Wilson, the police officer who killed Michael Brown, has resigned. Would this make any difference?
We don't think it makes any difference. He can call it a resignment, but Darren Wilson received at least $500,000 from white people in this country who paid him for the assassination of 18-year-old Mike Brown on August 9th of this year. So he can talk about resignation, but he is resigning. They call it a golden parachute in this country when corporate heads leave their companies and they are rewarded with a tremendous amount of money. That is the situation with Darren Wilson. He has been rewarded handsomely for the murder of Mike Brown. He has been rewarded by the grand jury determination. He has been rewarded by at least $500,000 that has been given to him by various people inside this country.
All right, we'll leave it there for the time being. Many thanks to Omali Yeshitela, Chairman of the African People's Socialist Party from St. Louis. Thanks for your thoughts there, sir.